Welcome to Build 25, Part 3. The case mods and the custom paint are complete, so I can finally begin the assembly. And you can see that I've just finished installing the Aquarius 6 XT into the power supply shroud, which is definitely the most perfect position for it in this build, because it means all of the cables are going to be together under that power supply shroud and hidden. And if you know the Aquaro, you know it has a lot of connections on the back of it, and a lot of cables are going to be connected to this Aquaro. So I'm glad that there is going to be plenty of room for that and that they're all going to be hidden. And you can see that I also installed the front cover onto the power supply shroud at this point, because I know that I can access all of it from the back, which we'll take a look at later in the build log. So I've redone all of the water block installations as requested by the customer, because this is essentially a rebuild and upgrade. It's a build that was started by the customer and I'm basically continuing. So I'm now redoing the water block installations for the memory and also the EK Monarch module adapters. All of that needed to be reinstalled because, well, there was just too much thermal paste, and so it was a little messy. I wanted to clean it up. I'm about to install the front 360mm radiator with the Singularity Computers Protium D5 pump and reservoir combinations. And I'm just briefly showing you some of our different mounting options. So we have the D5 and DDC pump mount, which mounts onto three sides of both our DDC and D5 pump tops. And it allows you to install it, horizontally. I mean, there are just endless mounting configurations for these components. You can see that you can even use one of our backplates, either 120mm or 140mm, to mount our DDC or D5 pump top directly to a radiator. And yes, it is spaced perfectly so that you can actually use a backplate at the bottom of the configuration and a reservoir mount at the top for a cleaner, more economical configuration. But it also allows for a lot more different mounting options, and it's actually really good in extremely compact ITX builds, because it means that you don't even have to use a reservoir mount. You can just use a backplate and mount the pump top, directly. A lot of you might have been wondering why we haven't talked about our products more, because, well, you can go back and watch 7 years of me talking just solidly about EK and Bitspower to the point where people are like, are you ever going to use anything else? Everyone knows why I'm here, that I'm for real, that I'm here for liquid cooling, for the tech, for the enthusiast community. And whatever we create will only come from our passion for this. We are used to working for nothing but the appreciation of all of you. And we've done that for a very long time. But that only allows us to get so far, to just keep doing the same thing. But we want to move forward. We want to have an impact. And we really do have something to offer. And I think we've started to show this. And we're going to show this a lot more. That's the great thing about the enthusiast community. All of you are intelligent enough to know why I haven't been talking about my products. And you're also intelligent enough to, figure them out for yourselves, which is great. But I do have a responsibility to do guides and everything else. And so coming up soon, despite the consequences, which all of you already know, I'm going to go right through. I'm going to start with a full introduction to our products, everything about them, where they came from, the people who are responsible for them, through to our goals for the future, and then into detailed guides and everything else that our products really need and that I know all of you have been waiting for. It's time to install the front 360mm radiator with the dual Protium pump and reservoir configurations. As I install it, a lot of custom cables need to go in at the same time. For example, extension cables for the 3 front fans, which are going to run to a fan splitter, and then a single cable which will run from the fan splitter directly to the Aquaro 6 XT. So you can see that I'm starting to build all of these cables over here. Now, because we are using an Aquaro in this build and we are planning on using a lot of its functionality, including Aquabus D5s, it means a lot of extra custom cables. So normally on a pump you just have the power cable and an RPM or PWM cable. Aquabus D5s have a lot of extra functionality. You can see that we have an inbuilt temp sensor. We have the USB and also Aquabus, which actually do the same thing. They provide a lot of extra monitoring and functionality and connect the pumps into the Aquaro software. If you're using the pump standalone, you use the USB. If you're using it with an Aquaro, you use the Aquabus. There's also an inbuilt hardware alarm, which I don't normally use because there are so many alarms that you can actually set up in the AquaSuite software based on whatever you want, really, temperatures, RPMs. So, I find that is normally plenty. Now, when I designed the case mods, I made sure that I just had enough room for the radiator and the pump and reservoir configurations at the front here. And it was going to be a perfect fit, leaving me about 5mm until I changed things around. I decided to go for a full-length power supply shroud and run it all the way out to the ends of the graphics cards so that it lined up quite nicely. And also it had to meet up with this other panel. So I made a few changes along the way, and now it turns out that this configuration is not going to fit. Only by 5mm, it is so close, but I was actually expecting this anyway after I made those changes, and I was planning on installing the fans in front of the front panel instead of behind it. So this will give us an extra 25mm, plenty of room. The only problem then is they're going to be sitting right up against this sound dampened front panel. So I'm going to have to modify this front panel. The customer really wants a nice brushed black solid panel just like this one, which means that I'm going to probably have to, space a panel out a little bit and build another nice brushed panel. But, it will still look extremely clean and, it'll work out really nicely. The other thing that I could do is use the thin radiator on the front and the thick radiator at the top, but I think it's just going to end up a bit too cramped. Although there is quite a lot of room up here. You can definitely fit a 60mm radiator there with minimal overhang. So I'm going to take a look at both of these options. when you are modding, it is so easy to overlook the most simple things, because it's not as if you have, a full CAD design and you're prototyping. You're doing all of this in your head as you go. And unless you do a full test fit, there's just no way of planning it all out properly, because you cannot account for the almost infinite variables that are involved in a system like this when it comes to, down to the little details, the custom cables, the lighting. You just don't know, what's going to happen later in the build. You might think, oh, it's only the power supply, I'm not going to bother test fitting that. I know the measurements, I've measured it all out. But unless you test fit everything, you just can't account for those variables. And it's something that I've definitely run into a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you other modders have also. Now, with the pump and res combos and the front 360mm radiator, I knew that I had plenty of options. I did measure for these particular combos, and yes, they do fit. But the problem is, what about the loop? It needs to run down to that inlet and outlet on that front radiator. And the loop takes up a lot of extra space. I mean, it's surprising how much space you need to run 90-degree fittings off the pump tops. That's 30mm of height. And then with the 16mm hardline compression fittings, it's even more. You really need about 45mm. So we don't have that. We can't run the loop down there, and I can't turn the radiator around the other way, because then the inlet and outlet will interfere with the top radiator. I could use the thinner radiator at the front, but I don't like how that's going to look. The thick radiator at the top, it's just going to look cramped. It's going to mean I have to use shorter pump and res combos, like, really short ones. So the best option here is definitely to use, instead of large Protium reservoirs, medium. It's only a slight reduction. It's still a nice big reservoir, mainly for a compact mid-tower build like this one. And then it's going to allow us to lift the D5s up, which will easily allow us, well, not so easily, it'll still be pretty tight, but to connect that loop to the front radiator. So I've now installed the medium reservoirs, and you can see that everything is going to fit quite nicely, but that will be in the next part of the build log. Thanks for watching, and remember that none of this would be possible without our customers and our patrons.